Hi, this is Winter Austin, and this is One Final Twist.
If you love smart crime fiction, relentless tension, and women who refuse to back down, today's guest belongs on your radar. We have got Winter Austin, who is the author of multiple mysteries and suspense series, including The Bounty of Shadows. And I have got the new one that's coming out, Bait the Devil. We're excited to dig into her work and the journey on One Final Twist. So before we get started, can you give us an introduction to Dot
Yarbara.
Yabara, daggone it, Dot Yabara, and the series so that readers will know what they're getting into.
Okay, so when I sign books now, I tell people, welcome to my cigar smoking, coffee drinking, helicopter flying, arrow slinging Basque woman, Dot Yabara. And that's pretty much sums her up right there. So she's probably, I don't know, I think she is now the toughest character that I have ever created, and probably one of the most tight-lipped ones too. But I become pretty well known for my kick butt type of female characters and then I just took Dot to another level. So she's your combination of, if you could coin her in some kind of movie character, I take her from some of the old, well, let's put it, the 90s Western movies, not anything before that. So like Sharon Stone in, oh, what was that movie called? It's eluding me at the moment, where she was a gunslinger who came back to take out the man that killed her family. That type of person. So you don't mess with Dot's family, you don't mess with people she loves, because if you do, you've just gained yourself an enemy that is relentless.
She really is. She's so serious. The first scene was, so this won't be giving anything away, but I did bookmark it in Bait the Devil when she jumps on the bounty's back and he's like running and she's holding on. I'm literally there. I can see the whole thing going down and I'm cracking up. I was like, "You go, Dot."
Yeah, I love that scene too.
Which is funny because it's kind of taking from an actual bounty that I listen to. There's a podcast called Wanted that's they're now a husband and wife team, but she ended up having to chase one of their bounties one time and tried to do that, tried to bring him down. Well, of course, he was like 3 times her size. So he was able to just flicker off like a flea and take off. And so her partner was the one who eventually brought him down. But in this case, it had to be Dot. So
It had to be that, and the partner was a few minutes behind.
you're puffing. I love that I'm making TJ just a little weak in some areas.
Yeah. So Basque is a big part of Dot. Can you kind of explain kind of more about that culture?
So my first encounter with the Basque culture was actually in, I believe it was Craig Johnson's second or third book. He had a situation where it took him up and Walt had to go up and investigate a murder, and it was a Basque father or son. It's been a long time ago since I read that book. And that was like the whole culture kind of interested me because I thought it was about kind of like the Romanians, but it's not. It's its own separate culture. And I hadn't originally decided to have Dot as Basque when I first started to create her as a character. And as I kept going, I'm like, I need to go somewhere because most of my books are set in Iowa, where I'm from. And I'm like, I need to get out of the state. I need to go somewhere west. I want this more modern Western. And I'm like, what state hasn't really been like has a heavy influence? Because we got CJ Box and Craig Johnson writing their books in Wyoming, and Mark Cameron doing his in Alaska. And then we have a couple of books in Colorado and then Montana. And I'm like, I don't think there's a whole lot in Idaho. And as I got digging, I'm like, oh yeah, Idaho has a huge bass community. And I'm like, I want her different. And that's what led me down that route. So I got a bunch of books on the bass culture and learned about that. It took me a long time, but I found a place, a couple websites where I could actually have it translate Basque language for me into English and vice versa, so I could hear it spoken. And it is very difficult, but if you immerse yourself in it, it's very lyrical and kind of if you get Basque people actually talking, it kind of is a little bit nasally. But the country is not its own separate country. It's kind of a juxtaposition between France and Spain. And it's in the mountainous up to the coast. And so they've kind of been a little insular in most of their existence. But it's the oldest culture left alive with its own language. And they can't find anything older to figure out how it was created. Have some people that their names sound or look very French, and some that look very Spanish, but they're very Basque. But that and it's very unique, and there isn't a ton of stuff on it out there, but what is out there is very detailed. So it helped. And that's kind of why I wanted to choose that life. And I'm always up for learning something new, something that is outside the norm, because been lived most of my life in the Midwest, and I have German and Norwegian and Swedish background and ancestry. So that's it. So I'm always looking for something different and new to learn about, and hopefully bring that out in the characters when I create them in their own ethnic background.
And it's a very tight-knit culture too. I mean, Dot is very family oriented. If you're her friend for life. She's very loyal, very family oriented. And I love that about her.
And that is the culture itself too. It's very family oriented. They have a lot of symbols and a lot of like their homes are built with certain things into play. Like the doors open a certain direction and they have a symbol over the door, whether it's carved into it, painted or something. And that means family. They're open to family. And they have been open before World War II. They were very open to outside cultures, right? Between the Spanish in the 30s, that war, and then when the kickoff for World War II, there was a massive massacre of one of their villages. And so then they became very insular. And at that time, too, a lot of them were moving to America because there was a need for shepherds on sheep ranches out west. And they are known very well for their herding capabilities, and they're also known for fishing because they are the ones, per what I've researched, they're the ones that started the whole interest in cod. So fishing for cod. And it's highly suspected that they actually were the first ones to reach American shores even before the Vikings. They believe that the Vikings learned from them to come to America. So I'm like, this is just cool.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
What was the spark for the Bounty of Shadows series? Like what and one thing is just on me. I feel like Dot and TJ are so like by the first by before you even start book two, they're your people. Like you know them. So are they inspired by real people in your life?
Uh, Not really. So when I was starting to come up with this idea, uh, originally my publisher was wanting something a little different. We were having a great success with my Benoit and Dane series, and I was like, and even my editor knew this. I needed to move into a direction that I was more comfortable with. And I mean, I love writing mysteries, but it is very mind taxing for me and very researching detailed. But I love thrillers. I love writing in that genre. And I had a whole other series that was with another publisher that is kind of a romantic military thriller series. And I had fun just having my characters do things that most people don't think are possible, and all women. So my editor and I talked this out, and TJ's kind of that combination of Jack Reacher and let's see who else. I mean, even a little bit maybe like James Reese. I was blanking on Jack Carr's character and a couple of those other guys. Now, I'm not I know a lot of people love doing the Navy SEALs and stuff like that. And occasionally you get Rangers and stuff, but my husband was in the Army. And so and my son's in the Army. And I just was like, I really would prefer to stick with the Army. And they have their whole pilot thing for helicopters. And I'm like, there are a lot of women in there too. So if they could be based off of any real people, it's probably all of the mix of people that I've met in my lifetime or people I've read about and, like real life and learned about those. So, but in reality, they're just really what I would like to see characters be.
You talk about doing research connection to the military would kind of be your research there, I'm assuming. Did you have to do any research for the bounty hunter portion of the book?
Yes, I did. And I have a couple books on written by, now his name eludes me. His first name is Bob. And I learned about those books when I was at the Midwest Mystery Writers Conference in 23. One of the authors, she was a debut author, and her debut book had a bounty hunter in it. And she was talking about how she had researched that because she never knew anything about it. And she mentioned those books, and I was like, I'm going to be doing those books. So I was writing that down so I could get those when I got home, and I did. And I read through those, learned a lot. Now, what was written then versus how they do it now, there has been a lot of change because you bring technology into the play, where technology was kind of a budding thing. It's more so now than it was before. But the main gist of it is you're always going to need, someone's always going to skip bail. They're going to run off. There's going to be a bench warrant thrown out, and somebody has to go find them. And the bail bondsmen are not going to be the ones to do it. They're the ones doing the paper transactions and the money transactions. So they hire people to go and do that unless they have one specifically. I mean, I'm sure people are thinking, oh, I got hooked on the whole dog the bounty hunter thing. I didn't, but my husband did. So there were times I was kind of forced to watch it, but really, it really stems even further back than that on the bounty hunting. And because I cut my teeth on my first adult books were Westerns. And so then you have the old school bounty hunters. And so that is really where it really, really started for me. So, but besides the books, my next best research was the Wanted podcast, and listening to that. And it helps because they go into a little more detail on how it works for them too. And they're both private investigators on the sides, because bounty hunting doesn't always pay the bills. So they need something. And private investigators are still always used for everything, anywhere from being there to serve a subpoena to serving papers of some sort to for lawyers and law firms and courts to searching out somebody who doesn't want their private life being figured out.
So when you write, and I know that's the plotter versus pantser thing is always kind of asked, but without giving anything away, there are things that happen in your books that I'm not expecting. There's always, I don't want to call it like a side hustle, but like a side journey. So, like when they end up at the horse farm, do I think they're going to be, doing anything else? No, I didn't see that one coming. And so, like, I get when you say that it's fun to write in this genre because things can happen. So, but do you know, or do you just let it happen organically?
I have absolutely no idea. Which I've had this conversation. And my editor, bless her heart, and I don't mean that in a southern way. She to this day still feels like, even as a pantser, which I am, there's got to be some kind of outline plotting or something to go with it. And I'm like, you do know I am completely exception to that rule. I have no idea where I'm going. I mean, I might see a future scene to this is what I got to write to, but what happens between where I'm at and to where I'm getting to, I have no idea. It just comes to me, which also becomes a big detriment because I might run into a brick wall and I'm like, where am I going? And in the past, I would fight it and try to write through it and it would turn into garbage. Now I don't bother. I sit back and I wait. I am totally a character driven writer. the characters have to tell me where things are going and they have to show me what's going. Because, like, there's one scene in there, closer to the end that involves Vivian, the cousin attorney. Did not see that coming. And I'm like, I don't think this is going to stay. And my editor read through it and she's like, you can get this to stay because this could also create some kind of conflict in Dot. And I'm like, okay, it stays. Because I'm like, this is so out of left field. This feels like completely contrived. And she's like, no. And I'm like, it will work for book three too, because I can't do this, cannot not do this. I can't drop little threads of things for future books in the books that I'm currently writing. Partly because I know I have every intention of creating these as a series and hopefully continuing them on as far as I can. But I want something to entice that reader to say, hey, this was never resolved. Why was that not resolved? Well, it's because it's going to maybe come in book three, book four, how is that going to play out? So yeah, I call myself an organic pantser because everything comes out of me organically. And I have a couple of fellow authors in my Sisters in Crime Iowa chapter. They're like, you know what? We do the same thing. I go, isn't isn't it crazy though? Because you just really want to rip your hair out of your head when you're writing. And they're like, yes. I'm like, if you try to do anything out, like anything constructive, like you try to plot it out or write a little blurb or write a synopsis or outline it, nothing pans out. You can't do that, which really, really sucked for me when I was first getting into the industry and trying to get a publisher to pick me up because they anticipate these things in play in order for them to even look at your book. And I hated writing them because, especially if I didn't have the book completely finished, like my publisher still would like some kind of a more than just one little paragraph blurb on what's going to happen in the book. I'm like, I feel like I'm locking myself into this idea, and I know that that's not going to probably be the case. The plot could completely change, or the bad guy could be completely different than I think it is, that type of thing.
Does that make it hard for you to leave like Easter eggs? You don't really leave Easter eggs and you leave the threads, but like we don't pick a lot of stuff back
Yeah.
up.
If I leave an Easter egg, my editor makes me take it out. So, because she's like, keep it in the story. Um, and I mean, I try sometimes. Like, I might leave an Easter egg if there was a previous book that's already out there. So if that reader picks up that book and they're like, oh, there's more books in this series, and oh, what's this all about? And it doesn't get resolved, they're like, well, maybe that was in the last book. We try to write the books as if they're standalones, but I can't make it completely 100% a standalone. And that's what's really difficult in the mystery genre because each of my books in the Benoit and Dane series, they're supposed to be standalones, but it's a progression through a timeline. And people are like, I started on book four, and there's three books before this. And there was stuff that they mentioned in this book, and there was no, I feel like sometimes readers want us to reveal more for what happened in the three previous books or prior books. And I'm like, no, because then that ruins the read for you if you go back and read it. I'm like, that's not the point. And I'm like, don't dock us authors. I hate to say this and I hate to be critical of this, but don't dock authors just because you read a book out of order and you typically like to read books in order. That's your personal preference. Don't put that on the author. So
I'm
now,
glad you're saying that. Like it frustrates me when I see a review come out and they're like loose ends. Well, did you see it was a series?
yeah.
Did you see that there were, don't complain about the loose ends because it's gonna happen. Calm down.
Yeah, and I also would probably blame all of Amazon's like little short story serial things and putting out books too fast. You get the complaint that their authors aren't moving fast enough with the books and getting them out fast enough. And then when they do that, the quality of the book goes down from there on out. And I'm like, if you want a good read, let us write at our own pace
Mm-hmm.
and edit and do this correctly. Now, we could go and edit and edit and edit, and it could go through like five different eyeballs reading it, and still something might slip through. It's one little thing. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So now, if there's an entire chapter that's all screwed up, then you have something to complain about.
So let's talk about book one versus book two, because book one is already out. Book two is coming out pretty soon. How is writing the two different?
Writing book one was getting me introduced into the characters' lives and was trying to figure out just who Dot and TJ and everybody, all the players in the books were, how their interactions with secondary characters or, you know, non-secondary characters, the antagonists, would play out. And getting to it was a little more research heavy because I was still trying to figure out all of this stuff and spent a lot of time on Google Maps just staring at Paiute National Park because I've never been out to Idaho and I'm relying on what I can try to see visually as much as I can and just kind of creating a legitimate, like the ranch, how the ranch legitimately is set up, like how it would be up against the foothills of the Paiute and how the mountain trails are and how mountainous and like you got to take into consideration what here in Iowa, there's flat areas, but we don't have mountainous areas where trails are going around like this. So what could be 1 mile for us is just straight way and it takes a certain amount of time. A mile out there is a lot longer because you're, switchbacking and going through places and how the further up you get into the mountains, how sparse the vegetation becomes, how much rockier it becomes, and things like that. And then in book two, I had to figure out is it feasible to fly a helicopter from Idaho to Nevada? And it is, but you just got to consider that there might be a pit stop at some point where they need to refuel. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just like, because you could do that, but it gives you plane flights. Well, planes fly higher and faster than a helicopter. And so I had to like play around with that and do some math, which I hated. But it worked out and I'm like it's feasible, it's possible to do this. There are people that do it and there's no way in God's given name that Dot is ever going to fly a supersonic helicopter that could probably go higher and faster. That's just not her shtick. She likes those that she's used to, like she flew in the army. So then there are a lot of those equivalents out there.
How has your writing process changed from the beginning to now? I know you've went across genres and all of that, but like your author's voice.
My voice. I guess the biggest thing that changed for me is I went from being a stay-at-home mom when I first got started to going to work full time. So I had to learn how to juggle having all day to just do what I needed to do and write however long I wanted to. Now I have to put in a 9 to 5 in the middle of all this. My voice, I think my voice was there this whole time, but it just needed the right place, the right editor, the right circumstances to actually come out. Like you said, I started in the romantic suspense genre, but I go back even further. I was trying to break into the inspirational market, and the type of books that I was writing was just way too gritty for them. And I remember an editor for one of the publishing houses, he was an acquisition editor, who said he didn't want to see a romantic suspense where the couple fell in love over a dead body. And I'm like, that is romantic suspense. I'm sorry, you can only do like art theft and all that stuff so many times before people get sick of it. So my agent at the time switched me over and we went into the regular market and I got picked up right away with the romantic suspense series that I was writing, and it was a continuation, so it was following the same couple through four books. And by the time I reached book four, I was done. I was, and my agent was like, because I was ready to do something different, and she's like, "Why don't you write like what you know?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I am writing what I know." And she's like, "No, change your setting." And I go, "Oh, I live in Iowa." I was living in Iowa finally at that point, came back from Illinois. And I'm like, I know the Midwest, I know Iowa, and there's hardly anybody writing in this state. So I started writing that, and I came up with another romantic suspense series, but it was more thriller, police procedural, and that did really well. And then publisher shut down, and then I moved into Thule, pretty much following my editor. So I was like, I can't leave her. She knows me well enough to know that when she picks, she literally chomps at the bit, waiting for me to get books to her for her to edit. And she has to make herself sit and let it sit when I get it to her before she can read. Because always with me, and I'm sure she does this with all the rest of her authors, but with me for sure, I know she reads through it. She just consumes it. And then she goes back. And she might make notes and margins, like, if something pops up to her right away. And then she goes back and does her editing process. So I I'm like, I'm glad because half the time, like with Bait the Devil, you got the crappiest version of this book because I ran right up until the day it was due to her, and I did not have any editing done on it on my own side. But once she got it, she's like, you gave me enough bones here to work with. Now it's just fill it in the meat. And we had plenty of time for her to go through it and me to edit it again, her to make another run through it, me edit one more time. And then we moved it on. And by that point, I think we had it nailed down. But my voice really increased through that of sticking with strong-willed, independent, capable female character. And I've just run with it. I try to keep me out of the book as much as possible and let the characters talk because they're the ones that are actually leading the story. And anytime I intervene, it ends up get writer's block. So I'm like, okay, I'm stepping in. I gotta back out. So I back out.
I love books with strong female protagonists because, you know, we need more of those in the world for our younger girls and all children to read to really, because we're kind of evolving as a society still, and having that strong female character is one of my favorite things to read. You've evolved throughout the process as a writer by writing many different genres. Did you know you always wanted to be a writer?
Yes, probably not at birth. My mom and dad, I'm the firstborn. And so my mom would read to me when I was little. And she said when I eventually got up and I was mobile, I would go and pull the books out and she'd come and find me actually like babbling the story out.
Oh,
So that it was just inevitable, I guess. But I didn't really nail down. I knew I loved to write, and I preferred, in the years when you're going through school, when you have to do writing and things like that in English and do a story or something, or even in elementary school, I got bumped up to the higher level reading groups. Uh, but when they would ask for my interpretation on the story, I was always different than what it was supposed to be. And that was the same all the way through school. Even in high school, some of my English teachers were frustrated with me because I'm like, this is how I'm interpreting the story. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm just like, and then as you get into the publishing industry and you have these people who think they have to critically read your book and bring something out of it. And noteworthy statement ever made that I heard at a conference one time was that, you know, anybody can try and interpret the fact that in this room the curtains are blue. Maybe it means that somebody's like depressed or whatever. Did you ever stop to think that the author just really thought these curtains are blue? That's it. Like, that's me. Um, I don't make like a thesis in my books with like descriptions of what the ground is like or the area is like or the home is like. But sometimes it's the interpersonal. When you get inside that character's head, that's where you want people to pull the meaning out of the book. What's the conflict between the character? Is it between the character and the environment? Is it the character against another character? Those type of things, which is really fun when you bring in secrets. People are trying to hide because everybody tries to hide things, even in their own life.
Hmm.
And so I try to come up, which is why coming up with the title for the books is always difficult because I always use the title some way in some form inside the book, which with Bait the Devil, after my editor got done her edits, and she goes, you can try to convince me till till hell freezes over that Bait the Devil is not the right title for this, and I still will not be convinced. She goes, we hit the nail on the head with this one. And I'm like, yep.
I would agree with that.
What scene or conflict what challenged you the most? You can pick Bait the Devil or just any book that you've written.
I honestly think they're the biggest conflict, and it was in Bait the Devil. Um, it was trying not to give away spoilers here. There was a scene where Dot and TJ flip the script and decide they're going to do it their way instead of originally I had them actually towing a line and obeying the bad guys. And my editor said, absolutely not. You cannot do this. And both of my beta readers said, don't do this. I said, I don't plan on it, but I just need to get this book written. So right now it's just a holding point idea. And between my editor and myself, we hashed out a different idea. And it took me a while. And I went back and I rewrote that. It's just not that one chapter. It ended up being like three chapters because I had to have Dot's POV and then TJ's POV and then Dot's again. And what was originally just one little chapter turned into three. And I probably took 4 days to get that rewritten until I got it the way I wanted it, the way I felt comfortable doing it, the way I knew that this was how Dot would actually react. And I think the other part, and this is same can be said for all of my books, I always have some kind of a fight scene in it. And I don't want it to be the same type of fight scene every time. And TJ, twice now, TJ's had major fight scenes in both books. And the second one in Bait the Devil is I took forever to get that figured out. And I ended up going back and I watched grappling videos like jujitsu or MMA, pulled up some fight scenes that were done in movies. And I think the one that really helped me seal it was the one done in is it called Extraction that had Chris Hemsworth in it where he was like this guy that goes in to help rescue this kid in a situation and one of the fight scenes in there. And I was like, okay, they're not going to do everything that these guys did. They're not going to fall off of a building. But I kind of followed that. And I'm like, because the choreographing on that was so realistic, it made more sense to use that. And I had to make it so TJ ended up winning on the top. And but not giving him the Superman complex here where he didn't get hit, hurt, injured, that type of thing. So those are always difficult to do. I might like say, and a big fight scene happens, and then just move on till I can go back and focus on that.
So what's next for you? Are you writing a third book in this series? Are you working on other books?
Right now, currently, and I'm on deadline for it. I'm writing the fifth book in my Ben One Day series, And once I get that turned in, next is book 3 for Dot. So after that is kind of up in the air, but I'm really the way the reception has been for both Ride a Dark Trail and Bait the Devil, I'm really probably going to shift more of my focus on them and spend more time writing those books. I don't know if Benoit and Dane will continue after Big Five. I'm not going to shut the door completely on that one because I do like that series and it's very popular around here, especially in Iowa, because once people find out it's set in Iowa and murder mysteries tend to be more popular. Um, but I think the reception with Dot's books, and that is like where I really feel like I want to be going that direction. That'll probably be my focus from for a while until something else might pop up. But I really have every intention of letting my little secondary character Bethany grow up in these books because um, she's kind of become one of my second favorite characters outside of Dot. And I want her to become kind of like Dot 0.20.
Mm-hmm.
So, and which is good because I already have the opening scene kind of developing for book 3,
Okay.
and it's going to be with Dot and Bethany. So I can't wait.
Well, I know you need time to write it, but whenever it's ready, I will be first in line to read it because I loved book one. I loved book two even better, as Dot developed, and just became even more of a great, strong woman. And yeah, I just can't wait to see where she goes.
Yeah, and that's always the scary part for every author is the sophomore book going to be just as good or better than the first book? And I don't know if I've ever had the sophomore slump. So,
That's good.
which is good. And I think it's always the first book that feels like a slump for me because when you're starting a new series and you're starting to learn these characters, uh, it always feels more tedious. But this time around, I'm far enough along in my career and I've written enough books. I feel like the first book is not as difficult as it used to be. But I still struggle with that second book because you want to make it just as good or better, and you hope you're not. And I don't want to fall on like typical tropes. I don't want to fall into some kind of formula with my writing, which is kind of like it. Some of my series, I felt like I was getting into a formula and I felt like I was repeating things from the first couple of books. And I'm like, I'm done. I need to keep it fresh. I need to keep it different. I've dropped in my own personal reading experience, I've dropped series because it felt like I was reading the same book over and over again because I felt like the author just went too long.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there are authors that I still keep coming back to because they have found a new way, a fresh way to keep those same characters going and keep them as the same lovable ones that we want to read, but not making them so stagnant that we don't want to read that series anymore.
I have to tell you, I really have enjoyed you, um, the way that you get to drive your life's journey. Like, I mean, I'm hearing you say, well, I was tired of reading that. I don't want to fall into that trope. I like you are guiding your writing journey, and that's really refreshing because we have you see authors who maybe the publisher or the editor or somebody has more I don't want to say power, it's not the right word, but
Mm-hmm.
they have more influence over it. But I feel like you're really like you're in your stride. You're happy where you're at. You're doing what you want to do. And that's really a cool kind of thing just to see and hear that like this is what I want. This is what I like. I like
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps when you have the right people to back you up. And I do with my editor. She keeps me reined in, there's certain lines you have to tread. And if I cross that line, she's like, okay, pull it back. But I also have been in this industry long enough. I have watched its ups and downs, and I'm fighting for my career with AI and all these things, and I don't want to lose it. But I always said that when writing becomes a job that I hate, it's probably time to hang up the hat. And I got to that point at spot in my career in my life, and that was at the end of 2018 and in 2019. I was going through a lot of medical situations, and my publisher had shut down. The agent that I had at the time was not working for me. She wasn't doing her job. And I finally got fed up and I fired her. And this is I had a different agent from the one who got me initially my first contracts because she and I had to go our separate ways because she had a life change and so she had to let go. But I said, I'm not gonna dole out money to someone who's not doing their job. And the blessing in disguise with my editor moving to Thule Publishing was that Thule took authors who were not agented, and I sent a thriller to them as my, I guess, opening a request. And they're like, we love the book, very good writing. We just don't know how to market it. Do you have any other types of books? And I'm like, well, I don't have anything finished, but I have these ideas. So I sent them like 3 or 4 different type of proposals. And they came back and wanted Benoit and Dane, which was literally just a 5 paragraph synopsis and a very rough draft of a first chapter and a blurb, and a blurb for the book too. And they're like, we'll take it. And I'm like, okay. So I'd been with agents long enough and had enough contracts. I was able to negotiate my own contract and got back working with my editor. And I think I've grown as a human being too. And I'm able to like speak up for myself and speak up for other people. And if something pops up, I'm not always afraid to step back and just let it happen. I'm like going to object to this or do this or not. But I'm always still looking for the next step. I still want my career to grow. I still want to be able to go where that pie in the sky dream is. You know, everybody wants to see their books on movie. I would love to too, but is it a kill all for me if I don't? No, you know, uh, I would like something to be looked at and considered. And maybe one day, I don't know. I'm just, with the way the industry is going currently, I'm not in the mood to deal with the big five playing with the AI game. And my publisher, Thule, has flat out said that they will not mess with it. And that's where I'd like to stay. Uh, and they do a very good job of, like right now, Ride a Dark Trail is out for sale for 99 cents on BookBub and on Amazon and a couple other places. So, and I think it goes until the end of the month, end of January. So when this releases, people, if you haven't, it's out there for sale, and it's just the ebook version. Um, and then Bait the Devil is going to be out at the same time. So I'm really hoping to see kind of a jump in interest in new people and new readers too.
Do you have a local bookstore or someplace that's close to you where if someone who's watching wants a signed copy can get it?
Yep, there are a lot of, and I'm in a lot of them around here. And I'm trying to get into a lot of the state of Iowa. And I'll be up at the Des Moines Book Festival on May 2nd. So if you can't get to any of the bookstores that I'm in, you can come and meet me there and get a signed copy. I believe I'll be on a panel too, but they have yet to decide what the panels are going to be. Um, and that's put on by Beaverdale Bookstore, and they're in West Des Moines. And I'm in a lot of the stores around my area, and I will be going to a new one for me in Bloomfield, Iowa, and on January 24th. which I stopped in a coffee shop yesterday and mentioned that to the owner there. And she's like, oh, we go there all the time. They're friends of ours. And I'm like, well, come and see me. But I've also learned I have a higher success rate in new readers and buyers and people who want my books when I go out and I pound the pavement. And I've learned how to be a salesman for myself. And I reach out to the bookstores. If they're local, I go and stop in. It's very hard to say no to a person when they're standing right in front of you than anybody,
Yeah.
you know? So, and I got a couple places up in Ames and Ankeny, and there I'm going to be going up. I got to get a hold of the Charles City. It's called Prologue Books and Wine.
Hmm.
Supposed to set up an event up there sometime this spring and probably maybe early summer. But I just got a text message from my daughter. Do you want to go to the Cheyenne, Wyoming rodeo days? I'm like, okay, between fairs and work and my book releases at the same time.
Yeah.
And one day will release at the same time that rodeo is like, that might be a good one to go to. I told her, well, if we do go to this, because she was like wanting to go to Pendleton, Oregon too. And I'm like, I'm not going to Oregon because that's the wrong time of the year for me to be gone from work. But it's in Wyoming. And I'm like, you do realize I'm probably going to be doing some research. I don't care. You do your thing. I'm going to be hanging out with cowboys after the rodeo at the concert. And I'm like, I'm not wandering around Cheyenne, Wyoming in the middle of the night. But it's just, I'm like, I need to get out there. I would really love to go and do a research trip in Idaho, but my schedule isn't always flexible for that because we're very heavily involved with FFA and 4-H, and our nieces are into showing goats. My daughter showed cattle for many years, and she's kind of continuing that. And so we have animals to take care of, and it's figuring out who's going to do the chores and who's going to stick around. And July would be easier because then the girls are off school. They can come over and take care of their animals. And my husband found out and he's like, "What? I didn't get an invitation." It's like it's a girls' night out. Your daughter doesn't want you around scaring off the potential boy. And I
Yeah,
told her,
no, no, Dad.
yeah, I said, and you want your mother with you. That's real smart. She goes, I said, she's going through cougar puberty right now. She goes, well, I only have one cowboy to worry about with that. I got all the rest of them.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see you in Chicago then.
Yeah, that's a definite for sure. I got the registration bot, which was funny because I paid for the registration and then like 4 days later they announced the early bird and I'm like, I should have just waited a little bit longer. But oh well, maybe in the long run I might see a refund on it, but I doubt it. I'm like I don't care. And like I said, I paid for my husband to go too, so he could sit on the panels because last time we went, he was working on his final paper to get his master's in education. And he sat out in the lobby and then walked down the street to one of the coffee shops to finish writing. So I'm like, this year you actually can sit there and, maybe you'll get lucky and one of your favorite authors will be there and you can listen to them. Because
Yep.
we went to the Des Moines Book Festival this past year when CJ Box was there as the main attraction,
Hmm.
and my husband flipped out. He didn't know until the night before. And I'm like, you had just as much access to the website and all the promotional stuff to know that CJ Box was coming. He's like, why didn't you tell me? Because he was complaining about having to go. And then when he found out, oh, yeah. And then he,
C CJ is going to be in Marion, I think next month.
yeah. And I have got everything. And I think it's a Swamp Box through
Yeah.
Swamp Box Books.
Yep.
And I'm contemplating it, but I'm trying to remember what day that is. I think we have something going on, so we won't be able to make it up there. But if it's during, I think it's the weekend right before my book is due, so I probably won't be able to run off
Yeah.
and do anything. But yeah, I would love to go up there because that one will be a little more intimate than
Hmm.
the Des Moines Book Festival, where there were hundreds of people there.
Yep.
And Heather Gutenkopf was his moderator. So I would like to, just meet Heather one-on-one too. I have yet to do that, but I don't think I've like our big named Iowa authors, I have not been able to like meet one-on-one. A lot of it's been like social media interactions and things like that. But everything else is with my little sisters in Iowa crime group. And maybe some national people, but that's about it.
Well, as a fellow Iowan, I mean, I'm always excited when I hear of an Iowa author, especially, when they go on tours for their books, because, not very many people that aren't from Iowa are going to come to Iowa.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get like a CJ box very often. So it's always nice when we can meet, Iowa authors, and Minnesota has a ton of authors too.
Yeah.
But I love the Iowa authors.
Yeah. And what we learned is I'm pretty sure CJ loves to go on book tours, but he had a personal reason. His daughter lives in Des Moines. Oh,
Oh,
and
that makes sense.
yeah, and right now she's the only one with grandkids. So that gave him and his wife a perfect excuse. Originally, he wasn't able to make it. So he was
Hmm.
going to do it like a Zoom. And as we were there later in the afternoon, a couple of my fellow chapter members had to go home. They weren't they couldn't handle an all day thing, or they just needed to get home. And they're like, well, will it be Zoomed? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I was supposed to be Zoomed because he's not here. And then one of the volunteers said, oh no, he showed up. I'm like, did you know he was coming? They're like, nope.
It's always the grandkids that
Yeah.
pull them in.
Yeah. So, and I think his wife and his daughter and the grandkids were there too. So it's it was interesting, but I didn't get out of our booth and into the auditorium until almost everything was full, and my husband already had a seat and he was already surrounded. I'm like, I told you to see me.
Yeah.
There was one right behind him, and so I was able to sit, and nothing on people who wear perfume and cologne. I am very highly sensitive to it, and it can cause migraines. And
Oh
I got
no.
stuck between two ladies who were, to me, it smelled like they had poured the entire bottles on themselves. And I'm like, and it was hot in there because we were so many people in contact
Hmm.
in here trying to adjust, not to whiff. But by the end of that, I had a massive headache, and I'm like, I
Oh,
gotta get out
geez.
of here. But it was fun. I like, we might be popular and have our own fans ourselves, but we still like to fan ourselves with our favorite authors, and it's kind of fun to do that.
I love that.
Well, Winter, I guess we will stop here and thank you for coming and talking to us and telling, Sherry and I will be looking forward to the next dot book too.
Yeah. I can't wait to start writing it.
Well, thank you so much.